Welcome to the Spiritual Healing Cloud podcast. We help you explore an alternative world of insight, healing, and growth. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Healing Cloud. Today, I am joined with Hilary Dyer. Hilary is a medium, and whilst I've been in contact with a lot of mediums in my past few years, Hilary is somebody I have actually worked with. I can absolutely attest to. What I find important when it comes to mediums is knowing that their medium is authentic. That's why I wanted to have Hilary on the show. But before I introduce Hilary, I'd like to share with you my personal story as to what brought me to mediumship in the first place, because I've come from a background of being very scientific, very logical, not being religious in any sense, but my life shifted a few years ago. To cut a very long, very dramatic story short, I ended up in prison, and it was a long distance away from my family. I didn't have any visitors there, so I applied for the prison visitation program, and I was interviewed by a lady. She came into the prison and wanted to match me with somebody, and it turned out we were an absolutely perfect match, and I didn't know this until afterwards. She was a medium, and she came to visit me probably every 2 or 3 weeks for space of a few months, and I was quite literally a captive audience there. This was a lady I certainly wouldn't have connected with in any other way, but I was absolutely fascinated by her stories, by her being very down to earth. Obviously, she wasn't selling me on anything, and it got me curious. As you might appreciate, going to prison was a very, very low time in my life, and it opened up, without wanting to be too pompous about it, my spiritual awakening. My life during and after prison time felt like I'd been gifted with this beautiful opportunity that I just seemed to meet exactly the right people at exactly the right time. Coming out of prison, I was literally starting my life from scratch. I didn't know anybody. I was in a new part of the country, and I met a lady, Lena, who no doubt will be listening to this. And we met in a beautiful way. We were both doing some training together, and she was very interested in mediumship. We got talking, and she said, well, there's a lady I absolutely recommend, and she runs an open circle in Liverpool. Why don't you come and join? So being very keen to know more, knowing that, or trusting in these experiences of meeting people by chance, I turned up and I met with Hilary Dyer, an experienced medium who I've had some incredible experiences at her open circle and in just speaking with her. So I'm very proud today. I'm very honoured to be introducing Hilary. Hilary, thank you very much for showing up.
Oh, thank you for asking me to show up.
I'm absolutely flattered. I know this isn't something you would normally do. I've been explaining already that I attended an open circle with you, and I'm assuming that many listeners, like myself a few years ago, have got no idea what an open circle is. I'll leave it to you to explain it.
Yeah, I can only give you my interpretation of an open circle, which comes from my involvement with our local SNU church. And so an open circle to me is, as it describes, a circle of people who are invited to have open communication with loved ones, friends, family who have passed over, who are no longer walking on the earth plane, and invite them to have open discussions with them. So I can channel spirit through, but also I invite members of the circle to bring through any messages they receive themselves. So that to me technically is the essence of an open circle. I put a little bit of a spin on my own open circles because I introduce an opening meditation, and I think as you've witnessed, we ask those that are in the circle to allow a gift to be given to share with another member of the group. And so I like to give something to everybody in the group. I like to have a little bit of audience participation.
That was something which absolutely blew me away, and I will share my experience with that in a little bit. But sticking with the idea of the open circles,
yeah.
This is literally open to anybody who would like to participate. Is that right?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of an open circle, is that for anybody, any ability, no ability whatsoever, a disbeliever, anybody that just is curious, just want to come along, see what happens. There's a nice, gentle healing energy to the circle anyway. But anybody that just wants to kind of curiosity, really, I have had some people in the circle channel, and they've never ever channeled before. So spirit, as they say, move in mysterious ways.
Can you explain a bit more about what channeling involves?
Yeah, okay. So my opening up meditation allow people to become so relaxed, their vibrations are lowered perhaps, and are able to hear, use their clairs, use their clairsentience, use their clairvoyance, use their clairaudience, and they find themselves talking to a spirit, a loved one, perhaps somebody else's loved one in the circle. And channeling is them receiving direct information from that spirit. So they themselves become like a radio, the receiver. For some people, they can even become the spirit. So it would all depend on how openly they feel to allowing that communication to be part of who they are.
So as an example, am I right that somebody could be sitting in the circle, and would it be words entering their mind, for example, and they could just be repeating that out? I've got someone here who's telling me this, and I'm talking to the person opposite me.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing them, I'm hearing them. I can smell this particular smell. I can taste this particular taste. I have had one man who came who fully embraced the spirit, and almost, features change because they allow themselves to go deeply into a relaxed state. That spirit is able to come very, very close and offer that communication.
Am I right in thinking that everybody is capable of receiving?
Kind of want to put a little caveat on that, because I do think people with some disabilities can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think autism can be a little bit of a block, and ADHD. But I think that's more to do with their mind racing, or they're not able to get into that sort of like more relaxed state. I'm not saying that they haven't got the ability. I'm just saying that they sometimes can't, or they're not. They block themselves, or they're not able to get into that nice relaxed state.
I'll come to this a bit later, but I remember that you used to offer mediumship training.
Yes.
Is this something which you're still, potentially offering as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you need to interview people for this and say, "Oh, I think you're suitable"?
There is a loose kind of interview process. I am also very, very aware that people with some mental health issues shouldn't partake in either the open circle. I've had a very interesting experience, let me put it that way, in a gentleman that was perhaps having a psychotic episode that we had no idea about. And although he brought through some quite incredible information for another member of the circle, it altered his state of mind, and he had to be supported and leave. That's not like we, escorted him out the building. We literally had to support that man because he wasn't aware that he was having a psychotic episode. And then he came clean and said, "Look, I'm on medication and this is what's happening." So I do like to do some sort of loose term interview, because I want to know, if you got a medication background, have you got a disability, have you got an autism issue, and that kind of thing. There's a young lady recently joined us for an open circle and admitted that she had ADHD, and she couldn't sit still in the meditation, and she did have to ask if she could leave because she just couldn't settle. Her whole body just couldn't settle. So it's more, their own capabilities, I think.
What I found really curious about the open circle, I've attended a few of yours a few years back, was the diversity of people as well.
Sure.
It was quite interesting for me going with an open mind, thinking, who are these people? Are they all going to be lunatics? And it was very balanced. It was people I wouldn't have thought would ever be talking about this. Do you find that people perhaps go to an open circle in secret? Is there any shame or fear as to what it might be? Do people come cynical?
I do think there's a lot of preconceived sort of either religious concept that's been given to them. I shouldn't really be here. There's no point in telling my friends because they won't understand. There's a lot of various different reasons why people will or won't share what's happening to them. But yeah, it's wonderful to meet the variety of people that do come and actually hear their stories about how they managed, like your story, how they managed to end up in an open circle.
I remember coming very open-minded, dying to share my story about it, actually. I do remember the first open circle, and you looked at me and you said, "Oh, your father's here. Wow, he looks just like you." And everybody's always commented that. And I thought, wow, I don't know this lady. How could you have possibly found that information out? And you were explaining that you could see him walking around quite, I think that maybe it was confused. And I was thinking, well, that would be exactly my dad. He would never have been interested in any of this in his living life. And the way you described him, everything like that was, wow, there's something there. There's something which there's no way you would have known it otherwise. But the second open circle I went to, you gave us this opening meditation, which as a hypnotist, as a hypnotherapist, I'm thinking, well, close my eyes. There was nothing magic to it. It was close my eyes, take me on a journey. And I drifted off somewhere. I know that you were trying to take me through a forest or something like that. And I don't know where I ended up. And then you said, I'd like to invite spirit guides in to provide a gift to give to somebody else in the circle. And I had this really profound confusion because, and I talk about my logical, my conscious mind and my subconscious mind. My subconscious mind is showing me very, very clearly and very randomly a cricket bat. And my conscious mind was jumping right in and saying, no, it's too small. No, it's a cricket bat. No, it's too small. And I was getting myself quite frustrated with that. And in the end, out of frustration, as soon as the meditation finished, I said, look, I've got to just get this out. It's driving me crazy. It's the lady over there. I know it's the lady over there. I'd like to say it's a cricket bat, but it can't be because it's too small. And she looked at me in absolute shock. And she said, oh my God, it's my father. When he passed away, he left behind this miniature cricket bat. And we have no idea what it was about because he never liked cricket. It was a huge learning for me because my explanation, coming from a hypnotherapy background, is mediumship is something which we can all experience if we can put aside that conscious, critical, trying to understand part of our mind. When we can do that, it became absolute clear as day to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've just absolutely hit the nail on the head in regard to, firstly, what an open circle is, and secondly, about being in that receiving mindset.
Yeah. And I remember as well, other people in the group sharing things, sharing visions which were coming through. And again, that really impressed me because it's not me being sold on you as a medium and you having to prove anything then. It was already there. It was like, this is me. You didn't do anything to me. And that was really, really convincing. And this is where I'd like to move on from talking about just the open circle. I know you mentioned the SNU, didn't you?
Yeah.
This is the, what's the acronym?
Spiritual Nationalist Union.
Thank you. Okay. So this is an international organization for spiritualists, right?
Yeah.
Am I right that it's different in the UK than in other countries?
Yes, it is. And it's bound by quite a lot of rules and regulations. And in other countries, it's not so formal. And in other countries, it's probably even more formal. It all depends.
And that's where I'd really like to move the conversation along into evidential mediumship, because I've also attended spiritualist churches. I've attended trainings. And the one thing which really surprised me, and I love this, and I love telling everybody I speak to, is spiritualism is very, very much about proving it. Yeah. It's all evidence-based. Like 90% of a sitting is about the medium actually proving that this information is credible. And I find that fascinating when we have all these debates in every other religion about was this real or not, whereas that's the forefront of spiritualism for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's continue a little bit about evidential mediumship, because there is a distinction, isn't there, between a medium adhering to the SNU guidelines, codes of conduct, and somebody in perhaps a different country. I know American mediumship is different.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, they just seem to be freer to be able to communicate.
One of the things that perhaps you could just confirm or deny for me is the idea that with the SNU, with spiritualism using their code of conduct, as somebody who would go in as a client or a sitter, we aren't encouraged at all to provide any feedback apart from yes, no, and I'm not sure. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's in order for the medium to be able to make full contact with the spirit that's coming through and to be able to provide the evidential information that they're getting, rather than guessing, rather than making it up as they go along, which can fall into the whole cold reading situation. Asking the person, is this your mum? Rather than, I've got this person here, this is what they look like, this is what they smell like, this is your mum. So there is a big difference in regard to cold reading, and if you've been trained to a high standard, then yes, it's very much about allowing the medium to relay the information through the clairsentience and audience and clairvoyance, allowing that medium to bring you the purest messages from spirit.
My understanding as well is that as a medium, you're receiving this information,
Yes.
but it's open to interpretation sometimes. Is that right? And it's your role to actually communicate this over to the sitter.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that is the responsibility of the medium, is to try and get clear, factual information from the spirit to give to the sitter.
Can you give me an example of that?
So when I was trained, you're asked to try to feel a male essence, female essence. They gave me abilities to distinguish who you're getting through. I've got a male energy, I've got a female energy. So I was trained always to kind of like, if it's a mother, they're going to stand right behind me. If it's a father, they're going to stand right behind me. Grandparents stand a row back. Great-grandparents stand a row back. It's almost as if they were on the bleachers and they were moving up a row. So that's how I can distinguish genealogy.
Is that unique to you, or does every medium experience it in the same way?
It's going to be unique to every medium. These were tactics that I learned. I did have to start with everybody in the development circle I was in, had to start with finding the essence of what it feels like a male essence, what feels like a female essence, what feels like a child, what feels like... So we had to distinguish that. That was our foundation, that you build up your own essences of who's coming through. So one of the things I like to use is show me your shoes. So I start with asking the spirit, show me your shoes. You usually get them saying, well, what the bloody hell have you got in any interest in my shoes for? But that's how I start. And then I can build up the character of the person. So if I see working boots, high heel shoes, I can start to kind of build up a character, and then it quickly forms. It's almost like an anchor for me. So it quickly forms then into the personality.
Now, this is you communicating with spirit, somebody that has passed over. This isn't a verbal conversation, right? This isn't out aloud. Is this a mental conversation?
Yeah, mental conversation.
You've been mentioning the different clairs for the benefit of the listeners who might not understand the clairs. The clairs are these extra perceptions. And there's clair audience, which is being able to hear. Clair sentience, which is being able to feel, right?
Clairvoyance, which is
seeing. Yeah.
Claircognizance, so it's the knowing.
Knowing, yeah. Hilary, which of these clairs are you strongest with? And have you had to develop these?
No, they just seem to come in very quick succession. Again, which I was quite amazed at. I thought I would struggle, but I get taste, smells, hearing, all of it.
Okay. And can you turn this on and off? Like, obviously, if I came to you as a sitter, would they all come to you at once, or would it disturb you going to the grocery store and trying to buy some food?
if I'm going to the grocery store, it's definitely turned off. Otherwise, I'd be standing in front of the apples talking to myself. Well, people would perceive that I was talking to myself. I probably wouldn't be. I'd be talking to somebody that'd be standing next to me, but I have to turn it off. So I do have quite strict rules and boundaries in my own work in mediumship. I'm quite clear on that in regard to what I will and what I won't do. And I kind of feel that that's been a lesson learned, because when I was younger, when I was in my teens, there was an element of madness that I was going through because there was so much information being given to me. And I didn't at that time, I hadn't gone into the church by then, that it's almost, I liken it to somebody saying, here's a Ferrari, get in, and you haven't had a driving lesson in your life, and no one tells you there's a brake and no one tells you there's a gear stick, and you're just left to your own devices. And I've learned that I needed to know where the brake was and know how to change a gear.
It was interesting for me. I know we've both been to the Arthur Findlay College of Mediumship and Psychic Development for the residential course. And it was fascinating speaking to the other people training there, where the conversation so often turned to, well, I've had this ability all of my life. I just thought everybody did. We had a lady a few weeks ago that she grew up in England, and there was highwaymen in her area historically. And as a child, she was being driven around and she could see these highwaymen being hung at the side of the roads. And she assumed everybody could see it. Have you had similar experiences in your childhood?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. My earliest recognition is 3-year-old and seeing a man walk behind my parents' wardrobe. Almost off his cap to me. Hello. As I'm passing through. And me just watching him, wasn't scared, wasn't at all put out, just, this is natural, surely this is natural. And when I spoke to my mum, who was also a medium, by the way, when I spoke to my mum and said, there's a man just walked through that wardrobe, no, don't be sick. You know, a baby. Don't be silly. There is no such thing. But I kept seeing this man walk through, knew he didn't want to harm me, and just wanted to pass through. And was very polite about it. I've also, travelling around the country, I've seen Cavalier Knights wandering around. I've seen Vikings getting out of ships on sort of small rivers. Oh, I've seen all kinds of things.
Wow. You said that you, from the age of 3, this is when you started to be aware of being able to see and having these abilities. Was this something which you've just developed naturally, or did you have to train?
That obviously was very natural. I also, so my mum used to own her own shop, hairdresser's shop. And from the age of, well, I'm going to say 3 again, but I feel it was earlier, I used to find myself hovering, so out-of-body experience, hovering in the shop, watching her with her customers and clients while I was upstairs in the front room or in my bedroom or wherever it was. So I could tell her, you've been speaking to that man. And the postman, I watched the postman deliver the post one day. I was upstairs and he put it on the chair next to the door and I could see all of this happening. And so I was obviously having out-of-body experiences. I had no idea at that time. It took me a long time to realise that that's what was happening to me. So I've had lots and lots of experiences. Before I went to train, I really did feel that I needed to have some management over my abilities. And my mum attended the church. My nan had attended the church. So I knew there was an outlet there for me. And I was encouraged to go and do that. By the time I get into sort of like late teens, early 20s, I was encouraged to do that. But before that, it was just basically part of growing up with our family. It was like my mum she was a transfiguration medium. And so she changed into a geisha girl on a regular basis.
Whoa. Let's stop it. What do you mean by that? She changed into a geisha girl.
So she would go into meditation, and the next thing is her features would change, her voice would change, and her and my auntie used to have conversations. So my auntie would ask questions, relevant questions to perhaps family issues at the time. And this geisha girl would give the answers to the questions that my auntie was asking. But my mum was not necessarily in the room at the time. She disappeared herself, and this geisha girl's essence came through and spoke to my auntie. But I was privy to all of that because I was still a young kid, and so we were ushered out of the room. It was all very much part of what we did.
This is interesting because there's another medium I'm friendly with, and his father was a medium and kind of brought him into it. Do you think there's either something genetic or just something beneficial about parents or family encouraging this in a child at a young age?
I have met people, Martin, who are just very much discouraged from doing anything like this.
Right. By family.
By family. And they're usually, I find usually it's the mum that is the most prolific, sort of, with their clear sentience and audience and everything, that their ability basically. But the mum is very discouraging in getting the children involved in it. So I have had men and women come and say, like, no, I was never encouraged to do this. I was never asked to do this, but I always knew that there was an ability. I mean, my mum, because I don't know if we took it for granted, she never trained me. She just allowed it all to happen. So, I mean, I was privy to a lot of, like, the Ouija board was out most of the time in our house. I don't wish to work with Ouija boards. I have, but I don't wish to. It's not my favourite medium to work with. I just find that it can attract the more lower vibrational spirit that comes through. And to be fair, it's quite a lengthy process pushing that glans around to each letter. So I find it quite laborious. But my mum used to be quite religious about it because she would have an opening prayer. She would say, give her protection. She was very fastidious about making sure that she had a protection around us. But I have seen the letters fly off the table. I've seen glasses fly across the room. And it was all like, oh, well, they just don't want to speak to us tonight. It was all very matter of fact. It wasn't. No one ever went, well, that's a negative entity trying to bring some crap to the house. It was never thought of as like that. It was all very, oh, well, they just don't want to speak to us tonight. It was all very matter of fact.
I think this leads very much to that idea that if the conscious mind isn't questioning all of this and perhaps it's being nurtured by family, I think that's a huge advantage.
I do think you're right. I think I particularly, and I can only speak for myself, I particularly think I was given a huge advantage that, like, nobody ever turned around to me and went, don't do it. That's silly. You shouldn't be. I was given, oh yeah, that'll be right. Oh yeah, well, you might feel that. And we all had very specific abilities. None of us had the same ability. My nan was a tea leaf reader and she channeled, had spirit come through and would talk, spirit through her own players. As I say, my mum was this transfiguration medium. So we all had very, very different abilities. And so nobody ever disregarded anything. It was all just part and parcel of who we were.
It was also curious, you were mentioning about, as a 3-year-old child, you were aware of a man coming into the room. I've had a couple of clients, and I've got a client coming up in the next month, who would like to get back in touch with, they phrase it as their imaginary friends. And I find that quite fascinating. And my thoughts here are that I think children are very much open to more mediumship experiences. They can see things, but it's maybe conditioned out of us by society telling us we shouldn't be talking about this.
Absolutely agree. And the fear factor, you should be fearful of things. And especially if you've grown up around conventional religions, it is a clash. It's something that people will find either sinful or scary, very, very scary, and it's discouraged. But yet children find it quite easy to be able to switch into and tune into and hear and smell and taste and all the rest of it because they haven't had that overlay of conditioning.
You were mentioning about the Ouija board. It reminded me, I mean, my dad passed away a few years ago, but he used to tell me that he did it once and he was asking the question, are you a good or a bad spirit? And it came up as bad. And then he said the room went deathly cold and they were so scared and they ended up in his group repeating the Lord's Prayer. And he said he would never touch it again. Are there any dangers?
I kind of feel a little bit like I just don't want to encourage what comes through. But having said that, I also have spoken to spirit that say they just like frightening children and they'll say that they're a bad spirit anyway just to frighten them.
Oh.
So, but you'd only know that as an experienced medium as a kid messing about. These are things that like I just don't encourage it. I really don't encourage it.
Spiritual Healing Cloud is proudly sponsored by my own business, Guided Healing. Join me for profound unscripted hypnosis sessions to explore past lives, connect with your higher self, gain insights and experience physical and emotional healing. Learn more at guidedhealing.ltd. Have you ever had any experiences which have been terrifying either for you or for the clients?
Certainly, well, it wasn't just me. As part of the development group that I was leading, we were asked to go to client's house in the borders of Scotland. Very, very old. I think they could trace this house back to at least 1600 and something. The deeds went back that far. And they were having not very pleasant experiences as they were remodeling this house. There were two young guys who had moved in this house. So they were saying things like, the television has moved. And like, how has the television moved? But they had this, I don't know, 70-odd inch TV that slid from one side of the unit to the other. They were having pictures moved, ornaments found on, they weren't smashed, but the ornaments were found on the floor. All this kind of thing was happening. So they knew that there was something happening. And in one particular room, so as a development group, I thought it would be a good idea to go along and let the group use their abilities to find out what was happening. So we split up into 3 different groups and we were all sent off into different parts of the house. And then all the groups got back together and we discussed what we'd seen, heard and experienced. And so as we were walking up the stairs, my particular group, me and 2 other people, there was this really horrible, malicious, vile. We felt sick. We were all talking about, oh my God, I feel really sick. We couldn't get to the top of the stairs, to be fair.
Was this really a smell, sick. A feeling?
We did. It was definitely a feeling, and it physically made us feel sick.
Wow.
We felt that there was somebody repelling us. We couldn't, we physically felt there was we just couldn't get up the stairs, as if somebody was pushing us back. We eventually did get up the stairs to go into this particular room and find out what was happening. And we picked up that this was a particular spirit from the 1600s who had made himself a lay preacher. He wasn't really a real religious preacher. He'd made himself a lay preacher. He called himself a lay preacher. He'd adopted the title and had almost become the police officer of this very small village that we were in. And through being a police officer, he felt it was his responsibility to chastise the children of the village. So parents would send their children to this man to be chastised. His way of chastising young people was to whip them and cause them quite a lot of physical pain. We were picking up these conditions, especially when we went into the attic. We picked up quite some gruesome feelings of his, we would call it torture. We did do some research, and there was a particular lay preacher in the village. It didn't give us that particular address, but it gave us a house just up the road. Or next door or something. But then apparently the guys who lived there found out more history, and apparently he'd knocked the houses into 2. This particular spirit really was malicious. It was really horrible. And one young woman was coming down the stairs and she felt as if she'd been whipped. She felt a very hot sort of pain in her shoulder. When we actually looked, she'd got this big red whip mark on her shoulder. So he was giving us a lot. He was giving us everything that he could throw at us. And when we actually then spoke to this particular gentleman. No, I'm not reverse gentleman. He wasn't a gentleman. He basically said this was his total domain. This was my house. How dare you be in my house? So anybody that lived in the house would be subject to his malicious ways and his nastiness. I mean, I've got lots and lots of different stories in regard to what he did with these 2 men and what, and lots of stories I can tell you. But just in regard to myself, they didn't want to meet any of us to clear this guy away. So we had to leave this guy in situ, and that's where he stayed ever since. So, but he rained some terror down on, they had 3 or 4 dogs that he tormented. It was just quite a horrible, sick feeling. But the one thing I remember is I knew I was protected. I knew that my family, my spirit family, my gatekeeper, my guide, they were all there to protect me. And I knew that I was safe. Yes, I felt physically sick. I could get the essence of this terrible conditions some of these kids have been in. But I myself felt very safe and very protected.
Let's talk about actual one-on-one readings, because I know that you do that, and you do this remotely as well as in person, right?
I have done, yeah. I have done.
Yeah. Is there a difference in what information comes through a remote session?
No, it can be sometimes a little bit more difficult to connect to the person, because I think when you sat with the sitter, you can quickly make that direct contact with them because they're there with you, and you know it's immediate. You can get that quick connection, and it's an immediate response and connection with the spirit. Remotely, you almost have to kind of fight through the radio waves, and I don't know whether you're fighting through the microwaves and all that kind of thing. I feel like sometimes you have to do a little bit. It's a little bit like tuning in your radio. So when I have somebody sitting in front of me, I don't have to do an awful lot of tuning in, really. It's kind of quick, and it's a little bit, I can't say it's instant, but it's quicker. When I'm doing remote readings, I feel like I have to kind of turn the dial a little bit to kind of get that clear voice and that clear connection.
Right. So here's an interesting question. Well, I think it's an interesting question. It's my question, so I'll take some ownership for it. You gave a really good analogy about like tuning into a radio. So how do you know something's there?
I think because I've developed a quick way of tuning my own radio in. The opening up meditation I do in the open circle, I suppose I do that so quickly now. And I try to bring my thoughts to a central point of not thinking, allowing some space for me to be able to hear and feel what's going on around me. And I think I've just developed it in such a quick snap of the fingers almost that it's kind of become a little bit of a, when you get into your car and you start your car, you know exactly how you're going to do it because it becomes a muscle memory thing. So I kind of feel that I've just developed my own quick sort of switch the radio on.
Let's say I come to you for a sitting, and I'm sitting, and you say, I'm going to tune in. What happens? Did you suddenly hear a voice, or you see somebody, or does it change? I mean, you're like, I know this is somebody here.
I tend to find myself going a little bit trancy. I go a little bit like a bit woozy. And I start staring either out of a window or I start staring at the wall. And as I'm doing that, I'm quiet in my mind, and then I start hearing, or it might be I start seeing. Firstly, I sometimes see the person, they're not in front of me. It feels like they're behind me or to the side of me. It's almost like a scanning machine that I go round and pick up these essences, and then I, like a little bit like you were saying about the cricket bat, I get some sort of image given to me, even if it's a pair of shoes, I get an image given to me and I go, let me just tell you what I've got. You tell me if you can link in with any of this. And I start by building up that evidence of this spirit that's come in.
What type of people typically have a reading with you or sitting?
Oh, Martin, it can be anybody. It can be, again, the curious. I just wanted to find out what this is all about. I've always wanted to do this. I've felt the need to do this. I've lost somebody and I really feel I need to get connected. I always would think, for a long, long time, I thought that would be the main sort of sitter, is those who've lost and they want to be reconnected. But it just isn't. It's people who are curious. I saw a television show and I wanted to meet a medium. There are people that want to kind of, they're so skeptical. They want to kind of like, are you for real? Check me out. Yeah, it's everybody and anything and anything and anybody.
I absolutely want to suck your mind dry of all the information which I want to get from you today. One thing which has absolutely fascinated me, and this has come from you and from another medium who I've got a lot of respect for. I was fascinated by the predictions which came through from a sitting and how accurate they seem to be. For example, for me, I was at the spiritualist church and my grandmother had passed away. It was a difficult time for me, but also I was involved with a very ugly divorce. I was fighting tooth and nail to be able to see my children. It had been an ongoing thing. It had been very frustrating. And I hadn't asked this. The medium hadn't communicated with me in any way. But at the end of the reading in the Spiritualist Church, he says, something else has come through. The challenge you've got with your children will be sorted by, I think, September the 7th. He was very, very specific with an actual day. And it absolutely came true. I've got my ideas as to what mediumship might be. I've got my personal beliefs about the afterlife or whatever, but I can't explain that. I don't understand how these predictions can be made, because I know that you've had predictions. I know our mutual friend Lena has had predictions. Can you explain your idea of what the other side is and the role of a medium?
That's a big ask.
I know it is, yeah. And I imagine you ask 3 or 4 people and you'll get 5 or 6 different answers for it.
And really and truly, Martin, you should be getting 5 or 6 answers to this, because everybody will have a different perception. Yes. And I'm only showed what I'm meant to see. I can only hear what I'm meant to hear. So everybody's different, and that's exactly what you should be looking for, that there isn't a generic answer to all of this, because it's got to be on an individual basis and depending on what your spirit guides want you to know at the time. In regard to premonitions, your loved ones know what you're going through. They understand on a daily basis what you're going through. They understand when you say, oh my goodness, could you please give me the answer to all of this? And they hear your prayers, and they hear your misery and your despair and all the rest of it. And it's the job of a medium to reassure the person that your loved ones are hearing you for a start off, and they understand the dilemma. Then they're not always meant to give you a prediction. It's about joining each other to say, hello, we're still here. We're still family. We've come to tell you that we love you. That's the main job of a medium. If the spirit feels that they really do need to give you some reassurance, they will give you that prediction. That guy who gave you that very specific date is really, really good to be able to do that. I think I'm a little bit too lazy to be able to kind of go, oh yeah, give me the exact date of that. But I can bring the essence of that message through. And it's because they don't want you to suffer. They don't want that lingering suffering for anybody. And so they will bring you some message of comfort. He was just very precise in that message that he gave you, which is marvelous. As you know, I'm quite in admiration of that guy. But that is part and parcel of a medium's job, and the responsibility of that. You can't just tell people random information if you really don't think it's going to help them. And I'll give you an example of this. I was woken up one evening. I don't normally invite spirit to wake me up in the middle of the night. It's one of my rules. But they told me that my next door neighbour wasn't very well. So I kind of, do I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go and ring on their doorbell and say, are you okay? And I had to give it a lot of thought. And I'm like, am I really a nasty, horrible neighbour and friend if I don't get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go and check her out? But I really had to kind of go, hang on a minute. I could ring on her doorbell. She might fall down the stairs trying to get to me to open the door. And she opens the door and I go, are you okay? You're not very well. And she goes, oh, I've got a sniffly nose. I've got a cold. And I go, okay. She goes, well, what are you waking me up at 2? So I had to go in my head. I have to kind of go, hang on a minute. Do you know what, right? If she falls down the stairs or if she's not very well and an ambulance has to get called, that's going to happen regardless of whether I knock on her door. But if I went round and knocked on her door, I don't know what I was going to do in regard to creating another scenario. So I did check on her the following day. She just had a cold. She literally had a cold. So you have to be extremely careful about what you're prepared to give to not just the sitter, but friends and family, whoever it is, because sometimes it's like, okay, well, do you want me to do anything about that? Should I do anything about that? Is it an emergency? They don't say, listen, think she's not very well, it's an emergency. They just went, she's not very well. And so if I had overthought it, oh God, I need to go round there, I could have created all kinds of dilemmas for that woman. It might have scared her half to death anyway, somebody ringing on their doorbell at 2:00. So it's the responsibility of the medium to kind of, I think you said something before about filtering information. You have to go, hang on, how much of this information does that person need at that time? They needed you to understand that you were going to see your children because it was something that you'd obviously been unsettled about and worried about. And if that was from your grandmother was really concerned about you. And so you have to say, I can give that message. I can give that message. There are other messages. I'll give you another example. I know a lot of people who predicted the aeroplane flying into the Twin Towers months before it happened. There's a prediction. So obviously all of life is known because we've all got a life's path. So it's already known, it's out there. So for those marvelous people who can tap into the Akashic records and all the rest of it, that situation was already known. And they rang up the agencies and said, there's going to be an aeroplane flying into the Twin Towers. And the agencies have said things like, well, when is that? You know, what date is it? What time is it? Well, I don't know that. I just know there's a plane. So like for months in advance, the agencies were apparently getting phone calls from mediums and sensitives about the plane crashing. But because there was no definite, defined information, and also if you said it's going to be 2:00, it's going to be on this date, the agencies would have gone, well, they're barking mad. We're not going to escalate all the services just because a medium rang up. There's a lot of responsibility that comes to us mediums when we give information out, and we have to think about the best interests of the sitter. If they're not going to give them something constructive, if it isn't going to help them, does it really warrant just spouting things out?
Do you have any experiences where the people who've passed over can make a difference to the physical lives of the person sitting?
Again, they have to be very, very careful because we've all got a defined path that we have to be on. Mm-hmm. So they have to be very careful about what information they give you, because if it's going to sabotage something that you are really meant to be doing, then it can't be given, or it's difficult to give.
Can I give you a hypothetical here? So let's say I'm flat broke, I've got no money whatsoever, and I come to see you and I say, please, Hilary, connect with whoever is on the other side. It's my biggest concern right now. Can they help me?
I'd have to say the ability is within you to help yourself, because the power of prayer is amazing. They're not going to say, yeah, put these numbers on, Martin, and you're going to win the lottery. I tend to find that the answers to those kind of questions are, you're going to be okay. They're not saying, yeah, you're going to be rich. They tend to say, you're going to be okay. It's about trust sometimes, Martin. It's about like, the universe has got my back. If you are meant to go through something that's adverse, you might have to go through something.
Yeah. That's where the growth is, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so spirit communication is a sensitive little deal when you're trying to gain information to people. And I don't ever profess to be a psychic. I'm not a psychic. I'm a medium. And a psychic is very different from a medium. Psychics can tune in to your essence, your own essence, to the Akashic records, to spirit that bring them information about your life's path. That's not me. I can't always do that. I use tarot as a medium for that one. But I am, I think, pretty good at listening and hearing and receiving messages from the other side. But when I've asked them for specific information, it's sometimes they will say to me, they're not meant to know. I'm sorry, I can't give that because they're not meant to know. And I find that, on behalf of the sitter, very frustrating. I'm not going to make things up either, Martin. I'm not going to try and ease your pain because you're going through something very specific, because that's not credible. I'm not going to put words in the spirit's mouths either. I'm going to give it to you what they say. I'm sorry, Martin, for telling me that, it's not yours to have at the moment, or what they're telling me is you're going to be okay. That's the kind of messages that I do get.
One thing I was wondering, have you ever had any experiences where somebody has been a sitter and they've been told, actually, it's going to get worse.
No.
It's always reassuring. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had anybody, they'll tell me that they've still got some rough patches to go through, but I have to remind them that so far so good, you've survived it. This is probably not the right time to go into this conversation, but if that sitter is due to depart the earth, they won't tell me that. For some psychics and some mediums, they might tell, but they don't often tell me that, because that's the time that person is due to depart. So they won't tell me someone's about to die. Don't get in your car, you're about to have a car crash. They haven't so far. I'm not saying they won't, but they just haven't so far given me that kind of information, because that is the day that person is meant to go. That is that day that person is meant to get into that car for whatever reason. And so by giving that information, this is what I'm saying about sabotaging. That if I said, listen, don't get into your car today, that you're going to have a terrible accident, don't get into your car today, but that stops their personal growth on their path, then I'm interfering with, I don't know, it's the natural order of something. I'm interfering.
Let's tap things up a little bit, because I know that you offer readings remotely, and I know that you're back at doing your open circle in Liverpool at the moment. So first of all, if you can just tell me a little bit about Open Circle. I know that there's certainly going to be people listening based around Liverpool who would like to come. So what are your plans for it?
We're going to hold them in my friend's shop. It's a holistic space. We're going to hold them monthly, and we're going to try to do them the first Saturday of every month.
And how about private readings as well? How could somebody get in touch with you? And what would be involved? Let's say I would like a private reading with you next week. Should I telephone you? Should I email you? How would I get in touch?
My number is advertised through my friend's establishment, which is Maitri.
Yeah, and I'll put all this information onto the broadcasts.
So if you've got my telephone number, I prefer it if you text me first.
Okay, so what's involved with the sitting? How long does it take? Do people need to prepare?
You can choose a half-hour reading, very quick half-hour reading, or you can choose an in-depth hour reading. There are people that will come specifically for a tarot reading, and I always ask them, would you mind if Spirit pop in? And Spirit will pop in and give them a hello, it's your nan, hello, it's your mum, hello. And I, again, give the evidence of that. So don't tell me anything about yourself. I don't want to know your question. Let the tarot do its job. And if somebody comes in, let me tell you who it is. Don't tell me. So that's basically how a typical reading from me can go.
Is it a payment up front? Is it a deposit?
No, if the reading that you get and you cannot identify with any of the information that I'm giving, then I can't charge people because it's not their reading. So I tend to wait until I've done the reading to kind of find out, first and foremost, are you understanding what I'm giving here, the information that you're getting? Are you satisfied with the information that you've had? Now it's time to pay. That's how I work.
What hours do you tend to work?
I tend to have a lot more energy for some reason after 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know why that is. I just feel like that there's something different about the energy for me at that time. So evening readings, I feel, are more producive.
Am I right as well that if somebody wants an in-person reading, they can come to your office, to Maitri at the moment, where you're working from?
Yeah, I've also got a development circle started, and we've already got at least 8 people that have put their name down for that, from all walks of life, who feel that they're ready to check this out. They don't particularly want to be tarot readers. They don't particularly want to be mediums. They just feel they've got an ability that they just want to check out and see what that's all about.
I know that I'm certainly very interested in that. I am so grateful for your time, for your openness. I have had more information from this 1 hour's conversation that I've had in years of casual conversations with mediums. So I've learned a lot. I'm absolutely certain that the viewers, the listeners will also have learned a lot. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.
Can I just put in before you go? Can I just say that everything that I've spoken about is only my experience, and I'm talking from that point of view. I don't ally myself to anybody's churches or anybody's, the higher up echelon of mediumship. I can only speak from my own personal experience.
I think that is absolutely the most authentic way, that you're not clouded by peer pressure, from convention, from rules and regulations. And again, I think that's the real value of evidential mediumship. It's what's actually being experienced in the moment rather than what's being read from books and things like that. So I really respect and really appreciate you coming from your own perspective with that.
Thank you.
I hope you liked this episode. To learn more, please visit our website at spiritualhealing.cloud and be sure to give us feedback and spread the word.